I certainly learned a lot after raw feeding multiple species for 5 years now. But just like you, I started off pretty confused and overwhelmed. Since then, I've learned from many of my mistakes, experiences, and from advice given to me by other raw feeders. I've also learned quite a bit from working in the veterinary field, which has given me the ability to see raw feeding from opposing perspectives. So in this video, I wanted to share what I've learned over the years so you can not only learn from my experiences, but also realize that everyone was a beginner at one time. One thing that I've learned after years of feeding raw is that not every animal is the same. This may sound obvious, but back when I first started, I thought feeding raw to carnivorous species like cats, dogs, and ferrets made so much sense. I assumed each of these species, young and old, no matter what health problems they may be dealing with, absolutely needed to eat a wide variety of raw meat, bones, and organs. I've now come to realize that this isn't always true. Some pets may be allergic to certain animal proteins like beef and chicken, while other pets may be picky and will only eat these two species. Some pets may need a modified raw diet where organ meats or raw meaty bones need to be replaced with a substitution. An example of this would be pets with kidney disease. In this instance, they would need a low phosphorus diet, so raw bones would need to be replaced with calcium carbonate or eggshell powder. Some pets may even need a completely cooked diet to tailor to their individual needs. Just because one individually tailored raw meal works for your pet doesn't mean that it's the right meal for your friend's pet. Something else that I've learned is that the information and science regarding pet nutrition is ever changing. Back when I started feeding my ferret raw in 2016, something called a Frankenprey diet was what the ferret community fed and recommended. The feeding schedule for ferrets on this diet is basically feeding raw meaty bone in the mornings, heart a few evenings a week, secreting organs for another evening meal, and muscle meats for the remaining evening meals. This is essentially to balance over time, but to an extreme. Many ferret owners still do this, which is fine if it works for their ferrets, but it's certainly not nutritionally balanced. Not only is it providing their body with a week's worth of certain nutrients in one single meal, it's also missing many nutrients like vitamin E, iodine, manganese, omega-3s, vitamin D, and possibly zinc as well. These nutrients are low or completely missing in Frankenprey and PMR meals that only contain muscle meats, bone, and organ. A meal like this either needs additional whole foods that provide these nutrients added to it, or they need to be fed whole prey animals often, which provides most, if not all, of these essential nutrients. Nowadays, more owners are referencing the nutrient guidelines that were created by the NRC or AFCO to formulate their pets' meals. But we also need to realize that these numbers may even change after new research and studies emerge, especially now that homemade diets are becoming more popular. Realizing that it's not necessary to balance my pet's meals to the very decimal is another thing that I've learned after years of raw feeding. Part of making your pet's meal is weighing out meats, bone, and organs, as well as adding up the nutrients they provide. Once you learn the weight of a certain cut or amount of each nutrient your pet needs, it can get pretty easy to become obsessive with the numbers. While all species have nutrient requirements that need to be met to thrive, it doesn't need to be provided in exact amounts every single day. Dogs, cats, and ferrets are all pretty resilient animals. They can be nutritionally abused with poor quality commercial foods for most of their life, and for lucky pets, will still live tolerable lives. Cats and dogs in particular still survive in areas of poverty eating human scraps and still manage to get by. So if your pet's meal is too high or low in certain nutrients for a few days, this certainly won't hurt them long term. After making a few formulated recipes that fit my pet's needs, I can somewhat eyeball during prep now. I know I may not meet every nutrient down to the decimal, but I do know I'm getting pretty close. Learning from others' mistakes really help catapult you into mastering something a bit quicker. Watch this video to learn my top 5 things I wish that I knew before feeding raw.